The next most easy place to discover tension and compression and contrast them is moving up the body from the extremity towards the axis is the elbow. If you can see, the bone in the forearm that can rotate and move is no structure or part of your elbow. The bone that doesn't move, the ulna, that goes down to your little finger, it forms a hook-shaped bone that fits right into that notch right there. And it pivot around, pivot, 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 until bang. It bangs, the end of this little hook bangs into the back of that socket. Now there's nowhere for it to go. And that's a form, again, of compression. A more aggressive and easy to feel compression. Here, it just sort of slowly squishes together till you can't squish anymore. But here, as the very sharp edge of a bone hits another bone cavity. So this is very easy to distinguish this compression. So again, if I go like this, I can't go anymore because of compression here. If I'd had a torn bicep tendon and I had surgery on it and I hadn't stretched it yet and I was going to rehabilitate myself, I might have to do massage and therapy and stretching to stretch this bicep out again so I can get my elbow straight. This is tensile training, tensile training, tensile training, tensile training, compression. What I have to recognize is the type of training that I did to get to that point is now inadequate to change what's happening from here on. If I were to think to myself, you know, it took me a month to get to here and another month to get to there, well, then another month I should be down at this angle, and another month I should be down at that angle, and I should get good enough to just whirl my lower arm in a circle. Why doesn't that occur? Because of bony compression. This is tensile, 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 compression. What can I do to change this? In yoga, safely, probably nothing. It's just the way that it is. It might be good for some things and bad for others, how much you can extend your elbow. If you look at Bob, if I turn Bob's arm like this, it looks like he's bent here. It looks like if you said to Bob, straighten your elbow out, it looks as if he's not paying attention to you. Say, Bob, straighten your elbow out. Doesn't happen. And what's more, when I tested this earlier with Bob, we have worked together before, he said it's always been like that. It's either he's got a large protruding part of the hook that goes into the elbow, or a shallow socket that's receiving that hook, or both. There's nowhere to go here. If I said to him, okay, Bob, just let me help you with that. This is not yoga, this is jiu-jitsu. If his arm was like this and he had scar tissue here, and I'm taking my thumb in there and rubbing it so hard to break apart the scarring, and I'm pulling his arm like this, now I'm helping him because I'm stretching out tensile resistance. Or he's doing yoga for himself. But once we get to here, either he does it by himself or I'm helping him, there's nowhere to go now. This is not bad or evil to do this. It might actually be healthy for the bone to have a moderate amount of compression put upon it. But to go bang, 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 push hard to make it bend further, that's a huge mistake. And it's simple and easy to see in the elbow, but this same principle comes up in our backs, and our hips, and our hamstrings, and our knees, and it's harder to feel it there. So I'm spending more time on what probably seems very obvious to you, because this principle illustrates so clearly the difference, the problems between tension and compression. And in yoga, if this wasn't our elbow, if this was our hamstrings or our back, we'd be going, God, I love this yoga. It's making such a huge difference in my life. I'm opening up so much. This is amazing. I feel so good. And it's like, I'm not doing as good as I used to, and I went to this workshop and I hurt myself. Because at some point in there, we didn't recognize it changed from I was training the tensile tissues that were resisting this movement into the compression. That's why it's so important, why so much of this DVD is emphasizing compression, compression, compression. Because all of you have been attracted to yoga and do yoga because you love how it stretches you. You probably don't need any help from me or anyone else to learn how to feel a stretch. What's harder and is not emphasized enough in our training is when is it compression? And what do you do to modify your training if and when it is compression? So now what I'd like to do, to contrast how much I could bend my elbow, let's call this normal. How much Bob couldn't bend his elbow, you'd call that hypo. Now let's bring up someone who is hyper. But please bear in mind, these are totally arbitrary things to say. Okay? It doesn't mean there's something wrong with Bob or wrong with me or wrong with someone who can bend more than me. These are arbitrary things of what deviates from 180 degrees. So let's bring forward Giselle. I hold her up, and this angle here is more than 180 degrees. I was about here. Bob was about here. Giselle is there. And I've worked with people who have an angle that goes off down like this. Is there anything Giselle has done wrong in her yoga to date to make her hyper mobile in this extension? No, it's just what she was born with. Could this work against her or for her in certain yoga postures? Yeah, might, maybe, but you don't know ahead of time. I've had students who can hyperextend, again, which is an arbitrary standard to say they're hyper, who can hyperextend a great deal. And they hyperextend in all of the arm balancing postures, except maybe handstand. They hyperextend in the wheel, they hyperextend in downward dog, and it feels great. For them not to hyperextend would be the equivalent of average folks like me not straightening my elbows out all the way. You'd feel like, gosh, I'm not exploring everything that's there, but I'll hold myself back. I don't know why, but I will. And there are other instances where, because of how the bone is shaped in their musculature and another 100 other variables about them, if they were to do the wheel or the downward dog and completely go into where they can hyperextend, that they can feel a strain at the elbow that someone like me wouldn't feel. The point here is not to try to predetermine for yourself or anyone else, is it good or is it bad? Is this good or is it bad? That's not helpful. It's not helpful to try and come to that kind of decision, and it's unnecessary. This may be very good for certain things, very bad for others, or completely indifferent, that she never feels herself compromised in any pose. Whereas Bob, at the opposite extreme, he might also feel, no, I feel fine in every pose, I just don't get it all the way straight like everyone else. Or Bob might go, I never like to do downward dog, because as soon as someone pushes on me to make me go deeper into downward dog, I get a big strain here. But you don't know ahead of time, because there are so many other factors. But what we're trying to point out here is that this is going to show up when I do a downward dog or a wheel. And is it right or is it wrong? Is it helpful or is it not helpful? It varies from case to case. And why would you punish someone like Bob, whose range of motion is here, and say, gosh, you're never doing the wheel correctly because you can't get your elbow straight? Well, he's never going to get his elbow straight because of the shape of the bones. How can that be incorrect? Or, he's got Giselle bending like that. If she's not in any pain, why would I make her back off and go to here? Why would I say, no, you can't explore the full stretch of the joint and get that feeling? I'd only do that or advise her to do that if she was experiencing pain here. But there's no reason to determine ahead of time what's the right angle of extension. What should it be?